huge thanks to OK Jazzy. They're your go-to for the 2026 World Cup and an incredible retro archive. They got decades of iconic league classics, from legendary 90s designs to the rarest club heritage kits. Whether it's a high-performance player version or a timeless vintage look, prices start at just £15, 4.5 Trustpilot rating and fast shipping. Use code Chris for 8% off and grab your piece of football history now.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the weekly Tottenham Transfer News Show. We are here to talk about transfers, of course. Only 8 days left now of the summer transfer window. Spurs, of course, have 6 signings over the line. Dubravka, Robertson, Senesi, Van Hecke, Tonali and Fernandes. We also have 2 here we goes, Savinho and Marmoush. It is expected that these deals will be completed sometime this week. But will there be any more in the remaining 8 days? And will there be any more departures? We will talk about it all here in the next hour or so. We're live on YouTube. We're live on X. Please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling as a Spurs fan right now. Even let us know what do you make of that performance and result on Saturday against Brentford. But of course, we want your views about the transfer window, because Spurs have showed real ambition in this window so far. But will it get any better for us and De Zerbi? Joining me this evening, as per usual, is Gareth McGuinness over in Ireland. Gareth, how are you?
Well, it was a very difficult weekend. And I still am feeling the effects of that result from Brentford. It was a real bad start to the season. So, I mean, I think it was a couple of Mondays ago we were all looking forward to the season. I did say last week, I know a few did say that it was potentially a bit negative, but I think that early season buzz of the transfer window, I think by the time that the Premier League came about, we hadn't done enough in terms of we were still late in a lot of departments. I know we'll come on to talk about Brentford, Chris, but to be totally honest with you, regardless of what players ain't on the door yet, we didn't look nowhere near ready for a Premier League game. We looked way off it in terms of fitness levels, energy levels. And I don't see that changing in a week. I think it could be a potentially very difficult start to the season for us, to be honest, after watching what I did on Saturday. I don't see how that can be quickly rectified. I think it could be a few weeks before we start to see positives.
Gareth, of course, we are here to talk about transfers, but I can tell immediately you want to get this off your chest about the Brentford game. You've not had the chance to talk about the Brentford game on the channel yet, so let me give you the next couple of minutes to get it off your chest. Tell me what you made of the Brentford game. Why did it go so wrong for Spurs? And I suppose I'll put in a transfer-related question in here as well. 5 of our 6 brand new signings, summer transfer window signings, made their debuts. 4 started, 1 come on as a half-time sub. So what do you make of their performances? Where did it go wrong for De Zerbi? And why weren't we ready, in your opinion?
Listen, I obviously had quite a lot of talks with all our members that be on the show, Chris, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, of course, but I really don't think it was a personnel issue or a tactical issue, really. On Saturday, it looked like one team was in mid-season, and it looked like the other team was basically just off a beach. There's no excuse for, it almost looked like Brentford were working harder than Spurs, but it just looked like Spurs. I can't understand why a team in the first game of the season wouldn't be up for it. So I don't think it was a case of the players have down tools or anything. I just don't think they are in any way conditioned to play in a Premier League game at the moment. And I think De Zerbi hinted at that in his post-match press conference. He says after the Hoffenheim game, he was worried that the levels weren't where they should be going into the first week of the season. And I think he has to take a lot of responsibility for that. Of course, yes, there's been a World Cup. And you could look at all results over the weekend and think Spurs aren't the only team that maybe they weren't the only surprise of the weekend. I know maybe Brentford is still a tough game anyway, but I think a lot of people did expect Spurs to at least get something out of the game and not to be completely one-sided the way it was. So it was a shock in that department. So there has been a few all results this weekend as well. We're not on our own, but I think deep down the manager has to take a lot of the responsibility for that performance, because it's his. At the end of the day, it's his job to make sure that the team's in the right condition to start the season. Now, if it's by design and we want, we are going to maybe suffer a bit at the start of the season, it puts him under a lot of pressure, Chris. It really does. So I don't think this is planned. I don't see why a team would not want to be in decent condition for the start of the season, and then by week 5 or week 6, you're getting on the kind of peak condition. But it looks like at the minute that we're going to have a pre-season during the Premier League. Almost the next 4 or 5 games is going to be getting us ready for the next 30 plus, because I really just don't see how we can fix this in a week. I don't. You look at the midfield, Chris. I know we talked about signings there. Tonali looked way off it. And when you're way off it, you make bad decisions. Bergville, another one, made horrific decisions in the game. Tonali's a robust all action. He looked like he couldn't move. He looked like he was stuck in the mud at times. Now, Mateus Fernandes, come on, I thought he made a bit of a difference. He seemed to be able to get around a bit more than others. But maybe that was the fact that he was playing against a Brentford team that they had 45 minutes in their legs, and he looked a bit fresher. Because I can't understand, if he was in good condition, why he didn't start the game. Madison looked really weak. I thought our best player, and there was no best player to be honest, but I thought if you're the best of a bad bunch was probably Andy Robertson. I thought he was decent. But other than that, goalkeeper was horrific. The back two, Van Hecke, Senesi was slightly better, but not good enough. Absolutely nothing going forward. And again, everybody has their opinion about Richarlison, but I don't know how you can blame him for that. He didn't get any service. There was nothing behind him. So whilst we know he's not good enough, I really don't. I think if Marmoush and Savino were in that team on Saturday, the result doesn't differ, because we were totally outplayed, totally outfought, totally outran. I don't know if players aren't in the right condition. It doesn't matter how good they are. You're not going to compete it. If you're even 5% off against our Premier League teams, you're going to struggle. And we were at least 25, 30% off. Honestly, Chris, that could have been worse than the Newcastle 6-1. Brentford could have been 5 or 6-0 up at half time. Then in the second half, penalties being missed. It could have been a real embarrassing scoreline. When the whistle went to 3-0, and I know Mikey Moore had 2 chances that he probably should have scored, but that would have flattered Spurs. They only really created, that was 2 chances they created in the whole game. Brentford, was double digits in terms of chances. I can't remember the exact stat, Chris, but was it 17, 18 shots Brentford had?
No, it was crazy.
It was. I've never seen a Spurs team go to Brentford, and I actually says, funny enough, on the prediction show that it couldn't be as bad as Brentford last year. It was worse because it was so one-sided in Brentford's favour. Look at that, 3.96 XG. That tells you they underperformed in front of goal, Brentford. 26 shots.
26, yeah.
Yeah, it was. And listen, that can't continue, Chris. If that happens in our 3 or 4 games, then the manager's going to come under huge pressure.
Gareth, I think a lot of people were surprised, and it's funny because De Zerbi was actually asked this in the post-match presser, were you shocked? And he said, yes, I was shocked by that performance. He said we were really, really bad. Is it just the case of it was a bad day at the office and he hasn't got his full squad available? Perhaps some of the players are a little bit... you've mentioned Tonali, and I'm glad you've mentioned Tonali, because £100 million signing, of course, all of us were very excited about this signing. But he had a poor game. I think everyone had a poor game. A lot of people in the media at the moment are giving Spurs a real bashing. Is only the first game of the season.
Oh, of course.
We're only 4 days into the new Premier League campaign. There's 37 games to go.
It's not terminal to the rest of the season. It isn't like, if we come on our next few games, then this becomes part of the past, really. But Chris, the worrying thing was every team can have bad. It was how far off we were. What's the 2 things you associate with De Zerbi teams? Good in possession and high pressing. We were neither. We couldn't keep the ball. We couldn't press from the front. Our midfield were 5 or 6 yards off their midfield. Yes, you could maybe say Brentford were in really good condition, and it was opposite end of the spectrum, but it just worries me that I don't think we can fix that in a week. And I watched Newcastle over the weekend, and they look in good condition. And again, they haven't maybe got the quality of a Spurs, but they look really energetic. They look like they can get around. They give Liverpool a very tough game. And I'm thinking, this could be a very tough weekend coming up as well, because if our levels haven't improved, then I just don't know how you can win games at this level if you're not able to compete physically. Because it doesn't matter how good you are technically. If you can't compete physically, you're in trouble. And that has got to be something. Now, maybe the Charlton game is a good thing now, because we've got a game. They maybe get more minutes than the players, but I think he has to go full strength. I think he has to go with the team he's going to play against Newcastle, against Charlton, because they definitely need minutes.
Do you know what? I completely agree. And it's funny because I've seen a couple of journalists today give their predicted lineups, and they are literally picking a Spurs B team of a lot of players that didn't feature against Brentford on Saturday. And I'm with you, because Charlton have won 2 out of 2 in the Championship. They've just gone to West Ham. They've beat West Ham United in front of a huge crowd there at London Stadium.
Chris,
Deserbi wants to go strong in these cups.
100%. And Charlton, not only have you said they beat West Ham, that was their second league game, but they started a week before that because you had the League Cup first round. So Charlton have actually played 3 competitive games over the last 3 weeks. So again, sharpness wise, this is going to be a very difficult game, Chris, judged on what we've seen on Saturday.
Gareth, I know we're here to talk about transfers, but finally, you're not talking about the Brentford game. I mean, I'm not concerned. I know that De Zerbi is going to work very, very hard with this team. I'm very optimistic about this season. But the thing that I did mention on the podcast after the game is the fact that the whole reason why you go and sign Premier League experienced players is that they know the Premier League, they know the players, they know everything about it, and they're ready to go. And it just seemed like, I know a lot of people are digging out Spurs at the moment, saying same old issues, same old problems, etc., etc. But half of that team were brand new players. Half of this team were brand new signings. So I'm just hopeful and optimistic that this season is going to be a good one under De Zerbi. Yes, a very, very poor start, unacceptable in many, for many reasons. Tim Sherwood on Spurs Call today gave Spurs a bashing.
The only worrying thing for me is that a lot of those players that played on Saturday have had a full pre-season. They've not been injured and they've not been at a World Cup. That is the one worrying thing. How can Tonali not be ready for the season? That can only be related to something we've done in training, that these players are undercooked. Because if World Cup players had been off it, then you would have. They hadn't, like, if Pedro Porro had played, and he was way off it, you could have said, well, he's just back from his break. But the fact that Bergvall, Tonali, and Conor Gallagher played in midfield, have had a full pre-season. There's no reason why they should have been not fit.
Well, you touched on this earlier. It was like Spurs were playing another pre-season friendly at slow pace. No disrespect to the opponents that we faced during pre-season, but that's the way that Spurs approached this game, in my opinion. I thought that was very evident. Where, and as you mentioned, and I don't think Brentford are getting the credit that they deserve, because Brentford were bang on it from minute 1 all the way to the final whistle. And like you also mentioned, it could have been a lot more than 3. Brentford were absolutely superb. No excuses from Tottenham's point of view. We need to learn from this. We need to move on very quickly. De Zerbi needs to work his magic, because we can't be having another season like we have done in the Premier League in the last 2.
I have no doubt long term we'll be fine, and De Zerbi will get it right with this squad. But I just think it could be a difficult few weeks now after watching that. I will be mesmerised if we've seen a different Tottenham next week.
Have we all expected too much? Because I tell you what, everyone was buzzing. Everyone was buzzing. When I got into the GTEC Community Stadium, everyone was in such a good mood. Everyone had been, delighted with the transfer window. I know there's 8 days left, which we'll talk about in a minute, but everyone was in such a good mood. Did we expect, everything to go
possibly?
Quickly?
I think it was a reality check, to be honest. It really was. But whilst I don't know if it is, I don't know how fair it was in terms of, I just think Spurs were so far off it in physical levels that we won't know. If we had been at the right physical levels, I do think it's more of a game, because we've got the quality. But there was 1 or 2 wee patterns that looked okay, and I think once we get up to full speed, we'll be strong. But I just think that's going to be very difficult to do in 7 days. I think it's going to be. Chris, I would nearly go as far as they say that you won't see the best of Spurs now after the international break. I think we're just going to have to try and get through these next few games and pick up as many points as we can. But I think it could be end of September, start of October before you see the best of us.
Gareth, I know a lot of people, including Tim Sherwood on Sky, as I said earlier, they're absolutely battering and hammering De Zerbi for team selection, tactics, etc., etc. I tell you what, being inside the stadium, when I was looking over to De Zerbi, he was going absolutely mad for a lot of that game. Looked so disappointed, so frustrated, constantly shouting at the players to tell them to do things. He, head in hands, looked very, very frustrated that he wasn't getting what he told the players to do. And that's what I think that was the problem on Saturday. Yeah, there were so many problems on Saturday. But like I said, I have optimism. I think that we need to just put this game behind us. And as you mentioned, another tough week. You never get an easy week in football. Carabao Cup on Wednesday, that's a very important competition, should be to us. Saturday, as you've mentioned, I know we'll talk about this during the week on the Premier League prediction show. Newcastle look very good against Liverpool, so that is going to be a tough game, but there is no easy games. Anyway, let's talk about transfers, because we could sit here talking about that game on Saturday all day long, all night long. Now, as I mentioned, 6 signings over the line, 2 here we goes, Savinho and Marmoush. Now, Fabrizio Romano has said many times that he expects these deals to be done and completed this week. It has been stated by many, including Fabrizio Romano, that Savinho's medical has been done. Marmoush's medical was meant to take place today, but we have seen photographs online today of Marmoush at the Manchester City training ground today. So whether the medical takes place tomorrow, let's wait and see. But Fabrizio Romano during the week has stated Tottenham reached verbal agreement with Manchester City to sign Omar Marmoush. Here we go, verbal agreement done on initial loan with buy option to become mandatory after certain conditions at £50 million. Marmoush said yes to Tottenham Hotspur days ago, travel and medical on Monday, but obviously it's going to probably take place on Tuesday or beyond. Sky Sports News on Tottenham Hotspur and Omar Marmoush, they have stated that Tottenham have verbally agreed a deal to sign Marmoush from City. Spurs have agreed an initial loan for the Egypt international with a £50 million buy clause that becomes mandatory after certain conditions. The 27-year-old will reportedly have a Spurs medical at the start of the week after agreeing to the move to North London days ago. Marmoush was an unused sub in City's dramatic late 2-1 home win against Bournemouth on Sunday. Meanwhile, Marmoush's City teammate Savinho was left out of the squad after an £85 million deal was agreed with Spurs. Roberto De Zerbi's side are seeking forward reinforcements after being easily beaten 3-0 in the Premier League opener at Brentford on Saturday. Now, Fabrizio Romano again, here we go. Tottenham reached verbal agreement with Manchester City to sign Savinho. Here we go, club to club, verbal agreement in place. David Ornstein from The Athletic on this. He has stated that Tottenham Hotspur reach agreement in principle with Manchester City to sign Savinho, deal for 22-year-old Brazil winger, £75 million plus £10 million in add-ons, £5 million of bonuses, highly achievable. Tottenham Hotspur Football Club to land main target, and Manchester City make record sale. And Manchester City boss Enzo Maresca on Savinho. He stated in a press conference pre-Bournemouth game, Savinho wanted to leave City since day one. Rodri also wanted to go. It's complicated to convince them to stay or change their stance. Gareth, 2 here we goes. It's expected that both deals are going to be completed this week. First of all, let's get your thoughts on the signings of Savinho and Marmoush. If they are wearing a Tottenham Hotspur shirt in the very, very near future, is he going to be putting a smile on your face?
I don't know about you, Chris, but I think when Savinho signs, we're going to need to lie down because we've been round the bend with Savinho that long now. That
it's been over a year.
Yeah, we'll need a rest because that name just keeps popping up. And obviously there's a lot of money involved with Savinho, but I think because of the actual longevity of how long it's took us to sign him, I think that adds pressure as well, that this player's been linked for so long. We're paying a lot of money for him. He really needs to hit the ground running. I mean, you've seen at the weekend there, Van Hecke, disastrous debut. Tonali, disastrous debut. You really, it really helps a player when you can get off to a good start. Now, listen, are we going to write Tonali and Van Heck off? Absolutely not. Do you know what I mean? They'll have better games. Because we know that we've seen them play in the Premier League before. So it's just really important that you get off to a good start. But I think Savinho and Marmoush are likely to be Spurs players by the Newcastle game at the weekend. I would be surprised if that wasn't done now, because it does seem that we're quite far down the line with these players. I do think Man City as well have agreed 2 deals for players for big money as well. I think a midfielder and a winger. So it all seems to be moving, and usually these transfers are kind of all announced at the one time once the two clubs are kind of happy to go together. So I would imagine Marmoush and Savinho are definitely Spurs by the Friday deadline, 12 o'clock, isn't it, for him to play this weekend. So Savinho, I'm not sure, Chris.
Gareth,
I'm
sorry,
really...
sorry. Before you talk about Savinho, I find this very, very strange. Get your head around this, because the picture online of Savinho, of Marmoush, sorry, at the Manchester City training ground, this has actually been tweeted out by Manchester City an hour ago. They've tweeted 4 players training at their training ground today, and it says Monday motivation, and it is the first picture that they have tweeted of Marmoush at their training ground. Is this not a bit weird?
Well, it is a bit strange, but I mean, all these journalists are saying it's done, or as close to being done. So, I mean, these are respected journalists, so we have to take their word for it. I think this is obviously just maybe taking a wee bit longer than it had hoped. The one thing that's surprising is we heard that it was going to be a double deal, roughly around 150 million euros for both players, and all of a sudden now it's a loan deal for Marmish. So that maybe that's something that's maybe held up the deal at the last month, and gives me maybe confidence that maybe there is Spurs are going for someone else as well. Maybe that money that they were going to spend on Marmish. So look, I'll stick with Marmish. I think Marmish is probably the one that excites me more of the two. I think Marmish could potentially be a very good player for us. He can play off the left or through the middle, but it feels like a Spurs player. And the way some of his goals are scored, it does kind of remind me of Son, the way he plays. I do think he's that kind of replacement for Son. I think he's got a lot of, he's got a lot of levels to reach to be put into that bracket, but the quality's there, and we've seen some of the goals that he scores kind of reminds you of some of the goals that Son would score. So I think potentially this could be a very, very good signing. Savinho, I'm really unsure, Chris. I've not been a fan of this from day one. Even back last year, I just think, as talented as a player as he is, I just don't think Premier League football suits him. It's too physical. It's too quick. He's very much a player that likes to get on the ball and draw players in, do a bit of skill, but output wise, he doesn't really seem to be able to burst past people. He doesn't inspire me. I don't think when he gets the ball, he's going to do something special. Yes, he's got ability. And the biggest comparison I could probably say is the player at Liverpool, Chris, very talented, Florian Wirtz, but he's another one that I just don't think there's enough output from. And I think these players would do very well in the European leagues, but I just think in the English league it's different. It's a different ball game. I think when Kudus is fit, Kudus is a much better player. Even though Savinho's got the ability, I just don't think it's going to work in the Premier League. It didn't work at Man City, and I don't think it'll work at Spurs either. But listen, the club obviously believe that they can make it work. And listen, what I will say for balance, Chris, is Pep Guardiola did say 2 years ago that Savinho's got the potential to be the best player in the world. Now, watching him, the ability's there, but it's just will he produce it? And I'm not sure we'll see the best of him in a Spurs shirt. I hope I'm wrong, because I think if you get the best out of him, you've got a potentially world-class player.
But it's understood that Marmoush is signing for Spurs as a number 9, Gareth, yeah?
I think he can play through the middle, yes, but I don't think... I think if you're going under the season with Marmoush, Richarlison and Solanke, you're still you're looking at between those three players, is any of them going to score 20 goals? I don't think so. I think Marmoush will score goals, but he'll probably score some quality goals, but I don't think he's going to be fighting for golden boots, or I don't think he's that prolific in front of goal. So, in my opinion, I would have went with Marmoush as the left-sided player and went out and signed the out-and-out striker. Now, I know there's another player that we're linked with. You'll probably mention him from Liverpool, but if he's going to be the left winger and Marmoush is the striker, then I don't know, that front three of Savinho, Gapco, and Marmoush to me doesn't scream reliable goal scorers, and I think that could be potentially a worry. Yes, there's quality there, but I don't know how many goals will be scored.
I mentioned this to you last week, I think, that during my time in New Zealand and Australia, in those training sessions, and you can see in all of pre-season as well, it just looks like we are crying out for quality in the final third, and you could see that again in the Brentford game. Do you have more confidence, or is it just the same for you if we put Marmoush and Savinho into this starting 11? And I was going to ask you this other question as well right at the end of the podcast, but I'm going to ask you it now. What's the rating? And I know there's a lot of questions for you here. What's the rating at the moment out of 10 of the transfer window, 6 players in? And then what number does that then increase to with 8 signings in, including Savinho and Marmoush?
Well, Chris, again, I think there was obviously someone that says I was quite negative on here last week, but I was just bringing up points that I think we should consider as well. Defensively, time will tell, but you can't say for certain that we've improved from last year. Time will tell if Van Hecke is a better player than Romero. I think Senesi is an upgrade on Dragusin, no doubt about it. Robertson for Spence, again, that's going to have to be one that we're going to have to question down the line. So I don't think there's been a massive improvement in defense. If people are happy with that defense, then that's fine. But I don't think any Spurs fan would say that they've got total confidence in that defense. Likewise with the goalkeeper, I think that's another question that will be answered in a few months' time. But again, are we any stronger with Kianski than Vicario? Again, we don't know yet. Midfield for certain, with Tonali, with Fernandes, with Madison back, we are stronger, no doubt about that. There's a much stronger midfield there, and up front we haven't improved at all because we haven't signed anyone yet. So I don't think you can give it any more than a 6 at the minute, because there's 4 areas of your squad, and we're only saying at the minute only one area for sure we can say we've improved on is midfield. We're unsure about the goalkeeper, we're unsure about defence, and we haven't improved anything up front. If Marmoush and Savinho come in, again, we don't know what Savinho's going to do. Marmoush hasn't really been given an opportunity at Man City either, but we kind of feel he might be the one that suits us more. I think with those two coming in, you would have to say that the attack's improved, even though I wouldn't be totally confident in both of those players being brilliant players for us. I do think Marmoush will be. I'm not sure about Savinho, but they're still better than some of the players that we have, so you'd have to say that's an improvement. I would give it a 7.5. And then if Cody Gapco come in, I would give it an 8. I couldn't give it any more than that, because I don't think any of those 3 players are on the level of a Harry Kane or Son. I don't put them on that bracket, so I don't think you can say that we've got any world-class attacking players. Yes, we've got some good ones, but you wouldn't go out and say we're as good as we were when we had Kane or Son or anyone on that level.
So if we don't sign anyone on that level, which I don't know who would be available in the remaining 8 days to get us to that level and get us up to a 10 out of 10 window for you, it's difficult, Gareth, isn't it? The remaining 8 days, but you've got to think about those attacking players.
I'm realistic enough, Chris, to know that we're not going to get a Harry Kane or a Son. But I'm just saying to you, I have to compare it to what we've had previously, and if we have those 3 players, yes, it's an upgrade on what we have. But is it going to be enough to fire us into the Champions League? And if it does, is it going to be enough to keep us in there? I think we would have to go again. And my worry is, Chris, this front three is going to cost quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't know how we can go about improving it in 12 months' time, in terms of we've signed players for 85 million here. Marmoush will possibly sign in for 50 million next summer. Gapco's going to cost 70. I don't see how we go then next summer, and we need to improve that because we're going to have to spend another 100. So it is difficult, and I just think for the money being spent on potentially these three players, I know we haven't spoke about Gapco, but I'm going to put him on there anyway because he's been heavily linked. You're talking 85, 70, and 50. So that's 205 million. So let's just say 200 million on those three players. Is that the best usage of money? Yes, you can say the market's a bit crazy with prices, but that doesn't scream at 200 million front three to me. And I would love to sit here and be more positive about it. But for 200 million, do I think Marmoush, Gapco, and Savinho is the best usage of money? I don't. And I would be lying if I says I was confident that front three long term would be a good fit for us. And I still think, Chris, that if Kudus is fit, Kudus plays.
Yeah, I was going to mention him because does it start to feel more exciting if you have Savinho on the left, you've got Marmoush in the number 9, and you've got Kudus on the right hand side? Does it then look a little bit more tasty to you?
And then potentially Xavi Simons, I think, would be playing too if he was fit. So there is a lot of.
Well, you're right because
there's a lot of options there, which is good.
Xavi Simons is going to come back. Hopefully, at some point, we will see Dejan Kulusevski. And then, of course, if we're going to talk a little bit about the starting 11 from Saturday, you're then talking about Pedro Porro coming back. You're talking about Mickey van der Ven coming back. So, on paper, it looks a very strong side. But De Zerbi said this in the pre-match presser. On paper, everything looks good. But, of course, you need to be a team. And he also mentioned that after the game. We need to be a team. At the moment, we're not a team. Within time, I'm sure that things will start gelling and everything will look rosy. And
I think this is a big game against Charlton, and then a big game. I think because they're both at home. I think per performances and the fans have. We've already said, Chris, that we might have to be a wee bit patient, but because of how bad the last 2 seasons have been in the Premier League, there's not a lot of fans out there that want to be paid. They want to see not instant success, but they want to see results. And I think this week, if we were to go to the League Cup
but Gareth, come on, let's be sensible about it. You don't go from nearly being relegated to everything just being absolutely perfect and spot on.
No, of course. But
I understand that was unacceptable and it was a terrible performance on Saturday. But you don't go from very nearly being relegated to everything being absolutely spot on the opening day of the season.
And I would agree with that, Chris. But I just think that type of performance that was put in can't be seen this week at home, or it will be toxic in the stadium because the fans, at minimum, want to see the players working hard and fighting.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And we can all accept that there is going to be a little bit of lack of relationships there because there has been so many new players coming on. We get that, we understand that, and things are breaking down. But we can't be dominated at home this week. It just cannot happen.
What I have, I'll use my words very carefully here. It's been good to see that people have been quite sensible in their reactions from Saturday. I know you see a few people have a meltdown about it, saying, "Oh, everything's this and everything's that." But overall, people do see that the football club are doing things in a different way. We have improved in terms of spending money, the way that we are doing things now compared to what we have done under multiple different managers, particularly when Pochettino come out and said about the putting the furniture in the mansion. We are seeing the furniture slowly being brought in, especially this summer, the amount of money that we've spent. But of course, there will always be that media narrative where Spurs have spent so much money. All the media, etc., are expecting instant results. But I think that Spurs fans are quite sensible people to see that this is going to take a little bit of time. And I think that all of us can see, especially as well, Gareth, and I think this is fair to say as well, we owe Roberto De Zerbi quite a lot. He kept us in the Premier League. And there were moments last year where we looked absolutely dead and buried before he came in.
Oh, of course. And listen, if this week went south, unthinkable, but if we could put it in the League Cup and Newcastle turn us over, it would be a disastrous start to the season, but it wouldn't be enough for me to not believe that we could still have a good season. Because I do think that we will get better as the season goes on. And Roberto De Zerbi showed last year how good a manager he is. He came into an absolute mess and got us performing quickly. You think about that performance at Aston Villa, the way we played, and you think about some of the other results that we got, and we played like a De Zerbi team. Yep. So he was able to get us up to speed quite quickly. But that was obviously because the players were in good condition. And I think just whatever's happened in pre-season at the moment, we're not in good condition. So I think once we get up to good condition, you'll see the best of, and you'll see a better Spurs because there's better players now available to them as well. But I just hope we can have a half decent week, because Chris, as much as we can be patient, there will be fans out there that start to, if this continues on for a few weeks, there will be fans that start to turn it up, and it will become toxic, and there will be a pressure environment. So sometimes you just have to get through these tough spells, and sometimes you have to dig in and nick a result here and there. But like what we did to stay up, Chris, really, the Everton game in last, we didn't play that well, but we nicked the result. The Wolves game, we nicked the result there. We outplaying brilliantly. You just have to be able to do that. And we need to find ways to do that over the next few weeks if we're not in good condition. And then once we are in good condition, you'll see that sort of better version of Tottenham where we see the De Zerbi football, the playing out of the back, the high press, winning the ball back high in the pitch and keeping teams boxed in. So the one thing I would say to a lot of the fans that are watching is, please be patient this year. I do think it will take a bit of time, but I do think we will get there, and I do think we will be a decent team.
Although we'll be patient, Roberto De Zerbi has already bigged this team and squad up, because in the pre-match presser he was asked, do Spurs have the potential to be number one? Because he was talking to TNT Sports, stating that ultimately he wants to take Tottenham to the very top. And when asked that question, he said yes, big potential. But
I think we'll be out. I think we'll probably be out of the title race by the time we get going. I think we'll be too far behind.
We expect a lot better season than we've had for the last couple, I must say, in the Premier League. But Gareth can't wait to talk about Cody Gakpo, so let's do it. The Athletic on Cody Gakpo a couple of days ago, Gareth, they stated that the situation with Gakpo has not developed with Tottenham. While Tottenham Hotspur remain interested and have spoken to the players' representatives, there has been no formal negotiation between the clubs. Liverpool maintain that the Dutch attacker, who has 4 years left on his contract, is not for sale. But just before we come on air, Gianluca Di Marzio, of course, Italian journalist, has stated that Manchester City are making a move for Tottenham Hotspur transfer target Cody Gakpo. Contact underway with Liverpool. There is fierce competition. And latest reports from the Netherlands are stating that Tottenham are not out of this race. There is competition for Cody Gakpo. I'll actually be surprised if he does leave Liverpool, because, of course, Andoni Iraola has just taken over there, and he scored a fantastic goal against Newcastle on Sunday. I think he's a top player. I like Gakpo, but I can't see him actually leaving Liverpool this summer. I will be surprised. What do you think?
I suppose at the minute it's hard to see how he would leave Liverpool, but I do think Liverpool are playing. They're playing the weekend game with PSG regards to Barcola. They know that the player wants to join Liverpool. PSG want an insane amount of money. And I think Barcola's only got 2 years left in his contract. So I think they believe if they run this very close to the deadline, they can get him for a bit cheaper. And there's also talk that they're on for Manta at Brighton. And they've had 2 bids rejected. And they're only about 5 million short now, the valuation. So it does feel that Liverpool could potentially sign 2 winners. It doesn't seem that it will be that far away. They've done the groundwork for these 2 players. Both players are keen to join. I think Barcola's one of those ones that they'll probably get him a bit cheaper, but they're going to have to pay for him, and I think they know that. I don't think they would be doing all this talk and all these talks they've had with, it's been going on all summer, this Barcola story. I don't think they would be doing all this if they weren't going to buy him anyway. So I do think they're just trying to save a few pounds. And if those 2 players come in, and remember Liverpool signed Victor Munoz, that would be 3 players, and they've only really lost Salah. So it does sense that there's going to be a shift. The one thing I would say, I know you said about Cody Gakpo there, and I know he scored at the weekend. He doesn't really fit the Areola style of play in terms of, he likes his wingers to be direct and fast and skillful. Cody Gakpo's not that type of player. Yes, he can score goals like we've seen at the weekend, but he doesn't necessarily run past players or light Anfield up the way like a Semenyo did at Bournemouth. And you can see that with Barkle, and Barkle is rumoured to be playing on the left. So Cody Gapco, where does his game time come from? He's relying on possibly injuries or, being a squad player. The Man City one's a bit strange because I don't think he would get into Man City's first 11 if everyone's fit either. So I don't really see him leaving one bench to join another bench. I do think that if he leaves Liverpool, it'll be for Spurs because I do think he'll be in the starting 11. I think he's likely to get that left-sided spot. And Savinho and Kudos potentially could be used off the right. Or we've been hearing that Kudos or Savinho could potentially play in the 10. So that would be an option, but I do think if Gapco comes in, he'll be given that left-sided spot. Is he better than Matisse Tell? You'd have to say right now he is. Can he score goals? Yes, but I think he can also be incredibly frustrating as well. So it's a difficult one, but he's better than what we have. But again, for the money involved, 70 million possibly. I'm not sure.
Gareth, so earlier on, I said, what would be the rating now? You said 6 out of 10. I then asked if Savinho and Marmoush sign, you'd then give it a 7.5 out of 10. If, and I know this is a huge if, but I'm going to ask you anyway, if Gakpo signed as well, and we have 9 signings in, then what is it out of 10?
Yeah, I couldn't give it any more than an 8. I really couldn't. Just because I still think there's at least 4 or 5 better teams in the league with better attacks than us. There's at least a few teams I'd rather have their defensive options. Yes, I think in midfield we would have one of the best midfields possibly in the league in terms of options as well and strength and depth. But I just think in terms of goalkeeper, defence and going forward, I would still be a little bit worried that we haven't quite got the strength and quality there. They can compete at the very top of the table. I would still think with that team, with that squad, and if you get Kulusevski and Madison and get them firing, like I do think that's definitely should be a top 6 squad. But I just think that you can't really rely on Madison. You don't know what kind of ship Kulusevski's going to be on. Xavi Simons is out. So you're effectively asking Marmoush, Savinho, Cody Gapco, Kudos, Solanke, Richarlison, Matisse Tell. They fire you into the Champions League, and I don't know if they have it in them. I would have to say that that's more of a top 6, possibly, than a top 4 team. And listen, as much as I know we're undercooked, the defense was really, it looked really weak. I know Van de Ven's to come back, and he'll be Van de Ven can't get back fast enough because he is going to be a big mess until he's back.
Yeah.
I worry about the height of the team as well. We looked a bit small as a team. We looked quite light. Yes, I know Pedro Porro gives you more quality and Van de Ven gives you more quality. The goalkeeper was horrific for a couple of those goals as well. And whilst I want to give this goalkeeper a chance and I really like him, he's going to be found out very quickly if he's not good enough in this Premier League. And if you haven't got a good goalkeeper or a goalkeeper if a goalkeeper is going to be costing you points instead of saving you points, I think it's going to be very difficult to finish in the top 4.
Do you think you're quite critical of Tottenham? Do you think sometimes you're too critical?
Possibly, maybe. But I have to be honest. I can't come on here. It wouldn't be credible of me or your show, Chris, for me to come on here and just spout any old nonsense out. They try and pull them over people's. I try to be honest and I try to be truthful. I don't know if it's possible, but if Emi Martinez was available now at the end of the window, I think it would be a no-brainer. Get him in. Because
yeah,
that's an improvement instantly.
Who's a better striker, Richarlison or Solanke?
I would have to say Solanke.
Who's a better striker, Solanke or Marmoush?
I think Marmoush potentially.
Not
just because of his quality. I think he's a better footballer than. I don't know if he's going to be a better number 9, but I think he's a better footballer than Solanke.
I was going to talk about outgoings, possible outgoings. Would you expect or would you be surprised if Richarlison left for somewhere like Everton in the final week of the window if when Spurs get the Marmoush one over the line? Or do you think that we will have the three options in that number 9?
No, I think we'll probably keep him unless there's a really good offer that we can't refuse. I don't think he'll be leaving the club. Possibly in January if he doesn't get any game time, and Everton potentially come in do a loan with a permanent option in the summer. That could potentially be something that happens, but I would be surprised if Slinky or Richarlison left. I think the only way those two leave is if we sign Marmoush, sign Cody Gakpo, and potentially sign one more, another striker. Then you would go, right, there's far too many here for how many games we have. But I think you almost have to count Richarlison and Solanke as one, Chris, because tend to be at least one of them injured. So if you really sell one of them and the other one got injured, it's leaving Marmoush really, and then you have to play Cody Gakpo if he comes in as potentially a false 9 or so. I think we'd have to sign 2 to let one of those go.
He doesn't want a big squad, De Zerbi. He said that.
No, but he must be worried still, Chris, about the attack in terms of the goal score.
Well, I think
Savini's not a goal scorer. Marmoush has still got a lot to prove. As much as I do like him, and I think he could be a good player, he's still got to prove he can do it in the Premier League consistently. Cody Gakpo, I think he scores. I don't know. I think he scored 7 Premier League goals last year. I think he can potentially get you 10 goals. I think he's that type of player. He might get you 15 in all competitions if he's in a European competition as well. I don't think he gets you 25 goals. He's not that type of player. Kudos, I think, another player that could potentially score 10 goals in a Premier League season. And then you're looking around, like you don't see Matisse Tell scoring bags of goals. You don't, Richarlison and Solanke, because of their injury problems, I don't know how many goals they can get you. So I think he'll have to keep those around unless he can get a lot, two strikers on between now and Marmoush being one of them, and if he can get another one on. But I really think we need to be looking at what options are going to be out there. If Emi Martinez is available for 10 million euros, I think that's a no-brainer. I can't understand why we wouldn't do that. Especially the Arsenal hatred. The fans will love him right away for that. He's a big presence. He's somebody that can play out of the back as well. And I just worry after seeing Kianski against Brentford that he's not going to be strong enough for us this season. I think as an option, as a number 2, I think, again, I like Kianski a lot. And I don't want to be overcritical because he does just one game, but I don't think he's ready for this level. I think if he learned a bit more off of Martinez or an older goalkeeper, he could potentially be our first team goalkeeper in a couple of years' time. Let him play in the cup games and whatever, and maybe train with a more experienced goalkeeper. But I just think that when you're having off days, you need your goalkeeper to bail you out. And yes, he made that big save against Leeds, but really, when we're looking at it in the cold light of day, he's made more mistakes than big saves. And that is the worry for me moving forward. He's just not ready, Chris. And I think if Martinez is available for that kind of money, then it makes no sense to me why we wouldn't explore bringing them in.
I know you keep talking about goalkeepers and defenders, but I'm just on the thought at the moment. Still on strikers. Now I'm going to mention this guy to you, Ollie Watkins. Now I don't know whether you saw the pre-match interview with Emery about Ollie Watkins. Clearly there is something going on there, and he was then asked about Ollie Watkins again after the game. And Emery looked quite furious at the fact that he'd been asked about it yet again. But someone like Ollie Watkins, when you're talking about Spurs chasing Premier League experienced players, Ollie Watkins can certainly put the ball in the net. I know there's comments in the comments section now saying that he could be going to Saudi, but anything can happen in the last 8 days or the last week of a transfer window.
Well, Ollie Watkins again would be another one that I would love to see come on. I know he's got a bit of an Arsenal connection, but that means absolutely nothing. When you put on the shirt, you go out and you do your best. And for all this Arsenal love apparently that he's got, all I can remember him scoring against Arsenal. He scored that many goals against Arsenal. It's incredible. I think he ended their title challenge 1 year as well with 2 goals at the Emirates. So that stuff does not worry me. Ollie Watkins, if he's available for 50 million euros, I will be all over that because he's, 1, he never seems to be injured, and 2, he's a regular Premier League goal scorer. He's usually in the top 4 or 5 goal scorers every year. And he's got so much experience. And for the money involved in this window, 50 million euros isn't a lot. What are we talking? 42, 43 million? I mean, that for me is a steal. And Aston Villa at the minute are in turmoil in terms of players looking to leave and issues behind the scenes. More, it's a no-brainer, Chris. I mean, surely you must be off the saying that Ollie Watkins coming through the door would be a massive signing.
Yeah. As we mentioned in the Premier League prediction shows, some of these teams, Manchester City, what a transition they're going through at the moment. Aston Villa, with the players that have left there, so many, Newcastle, selling players now, trying to be very active in the final week of the window. So there's going to be a lot of change in this last week of the window. Let's talk about Pape Matar Sarr, because a couple of days ago, the Times stated that he's told Tottenham he wants to leave as he wants more game time. De Zerbi has accepted his position. Galatasaray is an option, but Premier League clubs are interested, and Sarr would like to remain in England. And De Zerbi was also asked about Lucas Bergvall, which we'll talk about in a minute. He was also asked about Sarr, and he said, I don't know whether he will be here or not. It looks likely that he will be going out the door in the remaining 8 days of the transfer window. Will you be upset if he leaves?
Sarr?
Yeah.
I think it will be a big surprise now if he stayed. I don't think he's part of the plans of the manager. Again, it seems to be that we're going to accept a small fee. I'm seeing something around 20 million, which isn't a lot of money in this sort of transfer window. And I think he's potentially, he's worth more than that, I think. But I think one of the biggest issues that Sarr's had is he's never really nailed down a position. I think under Ange had that decent spell, but you don't know whether he's a number 10, if he's a number 8. Does he have to play deeper? I don't really know what his best attributes.
And said he can play all of them.
I see, that's a jack of all trades, but he's not really a master of any trade, is he? He's not necessarily a great passer of a football. He's obviously very athletic, but I don't think he's a great tackler. He doesn't score nearly enough goals, so I don't know where you play him, and I just think there's too much competition here now, and I just think he's been told that he's going to have to move on. The other one that you mentioned, Bergvall, I think the fact that he started the game tells you that he's part of the plans, and I would be surprised now if he left. I think even though Mateus Fernandes came on, it does feel very much like Bentancur and Bergvall are going to be part of that midfield. In some games, they're going to maybe until De Zerbi finds his best three, really. I think it's going to be between obviously Mateus Fernandes, Tonali, Conor Gallagher, James Maddison, Bentancur, and Bergvall. I think that'll be the six competing for 3 spots. The one thing that really worries me at the minute, Chris, is the manager seems to be very keen on Conor Gallagher. Now, and I can see why, because Conor Gallagher's an all-action kind of pressing machine. But I don't know where he plays. He's definitely not a number 10. Definitely not. He's not got that creativity. And is he better than Fernandes or Tonali? That I don't know. So I don't know if he's going to shoehorn him in. And I think potentially shoehorning him into that number 10 position could be a detrimental to this team. Because I don't see... I think a midfield of Tonali, Fernandes, and Conor Gallagher, there's not a lot of creativity in there. That would be the worry.
But surely through time, Gareth, that is going to change with if Maddison gets full fitness, if Kulusevski comes back, Mohamed Kudus if he comes back.
But I think the manager really likes Conor Gallagher.
Yeah,
and that is. I mean, I don't know where he's going to play. So he's going to, was he going to try and put him on somewhere else? I don't know, but Conor Gallagher seems to be very popular in De Zerbi's mind, and listen, it's because of how he plays, and that that's what De Zerbi wants, but.
Yeah, but like you've said, we need more creativity. Yeah. We've been crying out for that. I believe in a lot of the pre-season games, and of course the Brentford game on Saturday.
But he has been playing Conor Gallagher in that position in pre-season too, so that's what makes me think he's potentially going to play him on there, because not so much for his creativity, but because he can press from the front and win the ball back. So I think that's going to be one to watch over the next few weeks, but I think that could potentially be a mistake.
You mentioned Bergvall, De Zerbi, on whether Lucas Bergvall will remain at Tottenham in this transfer window. He said Lucas Bergvall, 100% he is staying. We spoke a lot during pre-season. He's a top player, a top potential player. I like the fact that he is staying and he wants to stay. Didn't take his opportunity, did he, on Saturday?
No, he was probably in the contender for being one of the worst players. He was dreadful. And listen, this is Bergvall's third. This will be Bergvall's third season. Yeah, this will be his third season. I think we're getting to the point now where we need to see a more consistent Bergvall. He's been here, not been here. I wouldn't say he's been here long enough, but he's surely have gotten used to the Premier League at this stage. I think he's such a good player there. I mean, I think potentially a superstar player there. He's got that much quality, but we need to see it on a more consistent basis now. We need to see a better version of Bergvall, not the inconsistent, raw Bergvall that you're not sure what you're going to get. And he's going to have to fight for his position on this team. It's not guaranteed because of the quality that's around him. But I am glad that he is staying. I do think it would have been a mistake to let him go. And I do think he can give us more. And we'll see. I think if this is it, if De Zerbi can't get it out of him, I don't know who will. I think this is the one now where we need to see Bergvall. Maybe not this season, but we need to see a better version of Bergvall. But within the next 12 months, we really need to see that explosion of him going on to sort of reach his potential or get very close to his potential.
It's worth mentioning as well that 20-year-old forward Oliver Iro has just joined League One side Plymouth Argyle on loan for the 26-27 campaign. Just wanted to ask you about this one, Gareth, of Vicario signing for Juventus from Tottenham. Of course, Vicario has taken to social media saying his goodbyes. It is a loan deal, €8 million plus a €2 million buy option clause, not mandatory. That's from Fabrizio Romano. Of course, he made his debut for Juventus in a 1-0 win on Sunday. Went off injured in the 90th minute, but it was later reported that it was cramp. What do you make of this departure for Vicario to Juve?
Well, we've let him go for peanuts, really, and that seems to be the theme in this window. That if we just want, and listen, we've been critical of the club over the years for not getting rid of players because they've been trying to get too much money for them, and then they've ended up leaving for free. So I think they've just decided to cut their losses with certain players, and I think in the likes of Romero and Spence's case, they've done deals with the clubs that they've wanted to go to. I don't think for Vicario there was a lot of options for him. I think if Emi Martinez was fit, they probably would have went for him. But they went with Vicario. And hopefully, I mean, I know I've mentioned it already, but I would like to think now that maybe we could be the beneficiaries of that if we can get Martinez in. But listen, he's not good enough. Whatever I say about Kianski still deserves an opportunity. Whether that's as a number one or being there as a number two. As I says, I don't want to repeat myself because I just do worry about Kianski long term, but Vicario was definitely, his time was up. He made far too many mistakes. He became far too unreliable. He couldn't defend corners or set pieces. And in this Premier League, if you can't do that, he was too weak in that goal. So yes, definitely the right decision to move him on. And if that's all we could get for him, then it shouldn't have been a reason to keep him. So you just have to accept what you got from him. Move on.
Gareth, one piece of news that I wanted to ask you about, particularly from because you're from Ireland as well, is Troy Parrott has made a £17.1 million move from AZ Alkmaar to Real Betis. Tottenham will receive around £3 million due to a sell-on clause inserted when Parrott signed for AZ back in 2024. Should Spurs have been in for Parrott to bring him back? Because when we talk about having another option, I know a lot of people will probably shout now and say, well, Will Lancashire should have been an option for Tottenham. And I completely agree. In my opinion, we shouldn't have sold Will Lancashire. But someone like Troy Parrott, could he have done a job at Tottenham? How confident would you have been?
Hey, listen, obviously, Republic of Ireland, he's sort of established himself now as the number 9 for Ireland. He scored that hat trick against Hungary to get us into the playoffs. Um, he scored 2 goals in the game before against Portugal. So, it's really kicked off for him in the last year or so. He's got that move, the AZ, and then he's got the move now to Real Betis. So it seems like an upgrade again. He's now playing in the Spanish league, and I've seen the picture that his partner put up and stuff, and it's obviously good to see, especially from a national point of view, some of our players playing for a better, not going to a better club, playing at a better standard. But do I think that Troy Parrott would have been ready or good enough to play a starring role for Spurs? I don't think so, Chris. I think this is a big move for him, and I'll be interested to see how he does. If he does really well, then maybe there is a conversation that maybe we have made a mistake, but I kind of feel that Real Betis might be his level. I don't know how much gears he will go up after. He's definitely a good goal scorer. He can score goals on around the box, but I don't see him going on to be one of the best strikers around. I don't put him in that category. I think he'll be a decent player for Betis, but it'll be interesting. If he does well out there, would a Premier League team take a chance on him? I do think if he moves to the Premier League, it's more likely to be one of the promoted teams that comes up next year, or a team around the bottom of the league. I don't see him playing for one of the big 6 or even some of the teams just outside that.
Gareth, a week or so ago, it looked highly likely that Mikey Moore was going to be signing for Cologne on loan for the entire season. Of course, he started the game against Brentford, had 3 opportunities, forced a good save from the goalkeeper. What would you like to see happen with Mikey Moore? What should happen? How should his development be managed?
Well, the first thing I want to say about this actually is I think some of our fans need to have a long, hard look at themselves. There's a lot of fans out there that are going on about youth players being given an opportunity. The player gets an opportunity and then gets absolutely hammered because he missed a few chances. Hammered. All I seen on social media at the weekend was Mikey Moore, Mikey Moore, Mikey Moore. You have to score that. I mean, it's the first game of the season. It's his first Premier League start, I believe, as well. Yes, Chris?
And he's only 19.
He's only,
I'm glad you've said that, because I know, Gareth, you're part of one of the WhatsApp groups where you've probably seen that I've defended Mikey Moore because you think that he's a young player, and you're absolutely spot on. We ask for these youngsters to get opportunities, and you can't bat.
Some of the comments was, I hope that loan deal is done now and get him out. And I was thinking, Jesus. I mean, this kid's got a lot of potential, got a lot of quality about him, and it's unfortunate that he didn't put away those chances. But you can't have it all. You can't call for youth players to be given an opportunity to get one game and then they're being told they're not good enough by the fans. I guarantee Mikey Moore's a better player for that experience on Saturday. He'll especially the fact how bad it was in terms of how we played as a team. But I'm sure Mikey Moore's had nightmares about those 2 chances because, yes, we probably still would have lost the game, but it would have been brilliant for him to get his first goal, Premier League goal, and he'll be hurting about that. And listen, if you remember at Rangers last year, he didn't have the best start at Rangers either, and he really kicked on in the second half of the season. So I do think that Mikey Moore's potentially still got a lot to give for the club, but what he needs is support from the fan base, not being absolutely hammered after missing a couple of chances. And listen, they weren't awful misses. He didn't make great contact with one of them, and I think the other one was a half decent save. He probably should have done better, but he had the target with both chances. It wasn't like a Timo Werner job where he missed nearly an open net. Like it wasn't like it was really, really bad. But no, some of the reaction to the fan base was really, really poor. And for how bad the team was, Mikey Moore did not deserve to be basically scapegoated for the chances that he missed. We should be protecting young players, not throwing them to the wolves.
Yeah, sadly, we just live in a world now where there is so much abuse online aimed at everyone. Everyone gets it. And it's unacceptable, and it has just become very normal, which is terrible to see. Gareth, last question for you. Do you expect any other incomings apart from Savinho and Marmoush? And the second part of the question is, which Spurs players can you imagine or can you see leaving in the next 8 days?
Well, we're getting into the final week now, Chris, aren't we? And sometimes crazy things can happen in these last weeks, days of the window. When we're on next week, there'll only be 24 hours to go or whatever, and then we'll have a fair idea of where we're going to be in terms of squad wise for the season. But again, things happen at the last minute, and we've seen it with Spurs before on the wire, really, of signing players. I do think there will be at least 3 players coming in. I think the three that are really heavily linked, being Savinho, Marmoush, I think will be done this week, and I do think Cody Gakpo is one that could be done next week. Because I do believe Liverpool are going to sign 2 players.
You think Gakpo is going to sign for Spurs?
I think so, because I do think Liverpool will get these deals done. So I don't see where Cody Gakpo fits in, and just based on how Iraola's teams have played at Bournemouth, how you eat the players he's identifying, they sign Mante and Barcola. Very fast, direct, pissy winners. I don't think Cody Gakpo is an Iraola type player. So I do think if they're bringing in 2 players, they're going to potentially let him go. So those 3. And listen, I haven't been very positive all night, but I don't know. I have a feeling maybe one more as well. Maybe we'll sign another striker. I don't know. I think defensively,
I'm not negative, Gareth, but I don't think we're getting Gakpo
in. We'll see, but I do think I don't see a world in where Liverpool sign these 2 players and hold on to Gakpo, because I think Gakpo's going to be asking where he's playing. So I think from what we hear, I know you have to take these things with a pinch of salt. He's quite keen on the move to Spurs, so I think he's keen to play first team football and whatever. So I think that's a goer. Now, only if Liverpool get these players in, but I do think that they will. Because
okay, hold on. So we signed Savinho, Marmoush, and Gakpo. So with the players coming back as well, plus the centre forwards that we already have that we've spoken about. So you have all those players. You don't think Richarlison's going to leave as well. So in a month's time, or in a couple of weeks' time, who is the front 3 at Tottenham?
Oh, right. I'm going to go Kudus, Gakpo, Marmoush, and then Savinho will be rotating with possibly Kudus, or Kudus is playing in the 10 if Madison's not fit until we get all players back.
So all 4 of them will play. So Savinho will still play.
Well, I do think there is a possibility we could go and get another striker if someone becomes available at the end of the window, and depending on who that player is, then that might have a different dynamic to the front. But it wouldn't surprise me, Chris, if we went out and signed another striker. And if we do get another striker, that may open up the possibility of Richarlison going to Everton. But I just think that De Zerbi will be looking at it the way we're looking at it. Can you rely on Marmoush, Solanke and Richarlison to score you enough goals as a number 9? I think if there's an opportunity to do a deal, and bearing in mind, Chris, that we heard that there was money for 3 players. Now, the Marmoush deal potentially being a loan now frees up money to potentially sign another player. So I don't think it will be a huge surprise if we went out and signed another number 9. And I'm not really convinced that Marmoush is an out-and-out number 9. He can play there, but I still think he'll want a more prolific and out-and-out number 9. So I think it could be one of those opportunity signings where it might only happen if maybe there's domino effects or something like that. As much as I would love to see Martinez come on as a goalkeeper, I don't see it. I really don't see it happening. I don't see any goalkeeper. I think goalkeeper, defence, midfield's done. I think the only incomings is going to be in that attacking area. So I definitely think there will be 3, but I could potentially see a 4th should an opportunity present itself. And then maybe we can start looking at 8.5 and 9 out of 10.
If that's the case, though, Gareth, we're signing 3 one more on top of Savinho and Marmoush, then I'm sure that players will have to leave. They will need to leave because, like I mentioned earlier, De Zerbi said in the presser that he doesn't want the squad too big. Although he does hope that we are competing on all three fronts with the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, because he was also asked about, one game a week. And he said, well, hopefully we're not having one game a week. Hopefully we're doing well in these cup
Well, it's going to
competitions.
be one games most week. Like them cups don't happen every week, so it's.
I know. Yeah. He's a positive guy, and I like that about him. And I think that De Zerbi as well, in that post-match presser after the Brentford game, I really liked his honesty about everything.
Well, honestly, only gets you so far too. We can't be having that press conference over and over again. So yes, it's the first game of the season, and judging on the rest of the league, there was a lot of teams not in good condition. So we're not the only ones that had a bad weekend. I do think, I did predict this, and anyone that's watching our Premier League prediction show, I did say there was going to be some funny results at the weekend. There was going to be a very, very topsy-turvy start to the season for a lot of clubs just because of how the season started late with the World Cup and stuff, and a lot of teams have had disjointed pre-season. So it wasn't a big shock to me that, everyone talks about the Big Six, but, a lot of teams in the Big Six didn't win in their first game, and there was some shock results. You look at that Hull beating nobody's seen that. Well, to be fair, I did say it would draw, but no one expected Hull they won and won so comfortably. Brentford they won and won so comfortably. Newcastle, Liverpool 99th minute penalty, or they were beat by a Newcastle team that everyone had wrote off. Aston Villa beat 4-0. It was a really, really funny weekend. So we do have to be patient, Chris. I do think it's going to take some time, but I think between now and the 11 o'clock on Tuesday, the 1st of September, we have got to give ourselves the best chance to finish as high as possible and succeed in the Cups this year. And that is going to revolve around what we do in these attacking areas in the last 7 or 8 days of this window. We need to bring in players that we know can fire us into a strong position, because I know you've mentioned there about players maybe having to leave, but I'm sure De Zerbi's also looking at it going, well, I expect to have European football next year, so I'm going to need some sort of a squad. So maybe a lot of these players coming in are going to be told that, yes, it might be difficult at times this year if no one's injured, but we're planning to be in Europe next year, so there's going to be more rotation.
It's such a big transition at the football club, though, Gareth, isn't it? And like you mentioned earlier, there has to be, and I know we hate, a lot of Spurs fans hate this word of patience, but there has to be, sensible patience within the fan base to see De Zerbi at work. He's brought all these new players in. We do, we've seen a lot of players go out, including our captain, Romero. We do expect a few more players to go out the door in the next 8 days. So it is such a huge turnover, isn't it, of so many changes.
And that itself is going to create a bit of chaos in terms of, it's not going to, I didn't expect Spurs to start the season like a steam train. I really didn't. I thought we would be a lot better than we were against Brentford, but, I knew it was going to be a difficult game. And based on what we've seen, we know it's going to be a difficult start. But Chris, the worry is that with social media now, there is a lot of agendas out there, and if these results, what's that?
A lot of managers, yeah.
Well, that's it. But if the Newcastle game goes south at the weekend, there's going to be boos in the stadium. You make no mistake about it. There is going to be boos. So again, it brings back that negativity. I really think that the fans, and everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm not telling fans how to support, but I really need to think that a lot of fans need to take a back seat and let the games happen. See where we are. We're going on to the international break. I think there's 5 games, or 5 or 6 games for the international break this year. See where we are after those games. Then give it a few weeks after the international break, because I think it's a 3-week break. Players are up to speed. And the other teams will have European football. And I think potentially that's when you could see Spurs improve quite a lot. So, I mean, I used to you hear from Man United fans all the time in the past. Sir Alex Ferguson says he never used to look at the league table until Christmas. Because there was always and then they were always notoriously slow starters, Man United, and they used to, from the second half of the season, kick on. So, depending on who you speak to, it's just about really giving yourself an opportunity in the second half of the season. You're not too far away, but we've seen it before, Chris. They are away. Last season, after 6 games, we were sitting third in the league, and look where we finished. So it's how much does a good start mean? I'm not so sure. I think it's more about how you finish.
Yeah, absolutely right. Gareth, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Always great to hear your thoughts on everything and your honesty, your honest opinions. We love it. Can I just ask you very quickly how you think this week is going to go, the Charlton game and the Newcastle game? Because it's worth mentioning as well, we only won 3 home games in the Premier League last season. That record needs to improve. So many things need to improve this year based on the last couple of seasons, particularly the last one. Home record, injury problems. De Zerbi said in the press conference as well ahead of the Brentford game, saying that it's absolutely key that we have a good medical department and they're on top of their game this season. So many things do need to change. But as you mentioned there, so many boos last year under Thomas Frank and under Igor Tudor. And like I mentioned at the start of the show, we wouldn't have been in the Premier League if it wasn't for De Zerbi. So we must, as Spurs fans, get behind this manager and just make sure he does the work needed to take this football club back into Europe. Because when you think over the last 20 seasons, we've been in Europe, 18 of them, and Spurs belong in Europe. So, but how do you see this week going?
Well, it depends. I mean, I don't know how the fans on this chat see it, but I think Charlton's a bigger game just because it's a cup. I think we need to have a really good go at these cups this year. We haven't won a domestic cup since 2008. If we beat Charlton and lose to Newcastle, all right, it's 2 defeats in a row in the Premier League. It's not a good start, but it's not terminal. Whereas if you lose this game to Charlton, you're out of the cup. There's no recovery.
Yeah, and do you remember under Ange, we went out in the second round against Fulham. Yeah. So we
there was
were
a lot
out
of criticism at the time too, and we had started the season quite well.
We were out of the League Cup in August, which is just unheard of. So we were in the second round because, of course, we weren't in Europe. Exactly the same now. But I say recently, over the years, you go back to Pochettino, Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, etc. They've all made such big changes in cup competitions. I think that this might be different under De Zerbi. I'm hoping it will be different under De Zerbi, and we will go all out and strong in these cups.
I don't think he's got a lot of options, to be honest. So I think he's going to be forced. Even if he had all his options, it may be different. But I think he's got very little wriggle room to change much. I mean, Porro's not going to be ready to play. Van de Ven's not going to be ready to play. So it's going to be very similar back four. The played against Brentford. Dubravka may come on the goal just because it's a cup game and he's probably got it in his contract. The midfield, I would expect to see Mateus Fernandes come on now. I don't know about Madison. Apparently he had some sort of fall, which is crazy if he's injured himself, falling over. Fernandes comes on. Bentancur probably comes on because I thought he done okay as well when he come on. So it might be a couple of changes in midfield, and then I think forward-wise, I don't think there's a lot more he can do differently. So I think he's probably stuck with his options. Chris, this is no guarantee we get through this game. I don't think this is cut and dry. I think the fact it's at home gives me a bit more confidence. I think if we were going there, it would potentially be different. But I think we've just got to get through this game. It doesn't have to be pretty, just as long as we can get through it and get into the next round, because I'm confident by the time the next round comes through, we'll be in better physical condition.
Well, I gave you the start time. You're on the podcast on Wednesday. I gave you the start time, didn't I? And then in brackets underneath, I put, if it goes to penalties, we'll start straight after.
Yeah. Well, I hope it doesn't go to penalties, but I would take a 1-0 now. I would take a 1-0.
We need a reaction. We need a good performance. We need the crowd behind the team on Wednesday. Of course, cup competitions have always been important to Spurs, and let's hope that we can go all the way and lift one of these cups in the very near future. Because 2008 was the last time we won a domestic cup. 1991 since we won the FA Cup.
Crazy. You won it out at Wembley too.
Crazy, yeah. Gareth, thank you as always. Always great to talk to you. You're going to have a very busy week like me on this podcast because you're back with us on Wednesday after the Charlton game.
I'm triple booked.
What's that?
I'm triple booked this week.
Treble booked, yeah. You're back with us with Premier League predictions on Friday, so it's great to have you with us. Always great to talk to you, and we look forward to talking to you again on Wednesday. Thank you so much. And actually, where can people find you on social media if they want to?
Yeah, you can find me on that handle below, or you can just check on here every night and see if I'm on. But listen, you'll probably see a lot more of me because we've obviously got the show next Monday again, and then I'm not sure we might have to do something on Tuesday as well. We'd be in deadline day.
Yeah.
Because it'll potentially be our last transfer show, so we'll have to.
So he's here five times this week.
Yeah, could be here 5 times in the next 7 days.
He loves it. Gareth loves it. Well, onwards and upwards. That's what I'll say. Onwards and upwards. Let's hope for a good performance and result on Wednesday. It's a big week for Tottenham, but there is optimism with what we have done in the transfer window so far. Optimism with Roberto De Zerbi going forward. So let's hope it can be a successful and a lot better season than it was last year. Gareth, thanks so much. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening. Remember that all of these episodes are all available on all major audio platforms. And we will see you on the next one. Come on, you Spurs.